kind of early-ish March, and the weather is shit, to be quite frank. I've had enough of this doom and gloom and this greyness, and I'm really craving some sun. I don't know about anyone else.
Yeah, and I think it's, segueing into our topic today, environment.
Mm.
Mm. How does the weather affect our ability to
Mm.
shift and change and adapt to certain behaviors? I mean, we know that the winter makes us a little bit more squirrely and indoorsy, and the summer tends to make us a little bit more outdoorsy and perhaps a little bit more social. And I've just come back from Gran Canaria, which was lovely and warm. And definitely, when you're in those warmer climates, you feel like more soft and pliable in your body, don't you? Like there's a feeling of a little bit more ease in the body. Do you get that, Serena,
I
when
think,
you're abroad?
well, this will link certainly to why people remember back in the day when people back in the day, because I remember when people were ill or they had certainly when they had arthritis, they were sent overseas to
Yeah.
warmer climes to ease their joints and their aching bones. So there's method behind the madness. It's why hot bath helps when you've got aches and pains. And so yeah, to be in a warmer environment is definitely it has a big impact on the physical, as does the light. I think it's a lot to do with the light itself as well, isn't it? The sunlight.
Yeah. Lighting is amazing. I mean, I don't know about you, but I cannot bear cold lighting. If there's, those cold light bulbs, I've got a ceiling fan here and you can switch between warm light and cold light. Cold light
Uh,
just freaks me out. It just makes me feel like I'm in a really harsh, fluorescent lighted kitchen or something. There's
mm,
no sort
very
of
clinical.
hugging.
Yeah,
Sorry?
like a clinical. It's very clinical light, a white light.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
clinical setting, like a hospital will have those really bright, well, clinical white lights.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. Which going back to the sun, as you've said. So, did you feel like you were able to do more? So, kind of linking to what we're talking about and change. Did you do anything differently when you were on holiday? I saw your posts, by the way, and it looks absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it's great. We go there quite a lot. Yeah, weirdly enough, I always feel more, although it's probably not weird, I always feel more inspired to write and work actually when I'm abroad in terms of like creativity. So I'll
Mm,
always take my laptop, I'll always take books and journals, and I will be the one sort of sitting on a table writing, and other people are like playing cards or drinking sangria. I'll be the one sat there, getting really, really inspired by my environment because,
mm,
environment is so important for, I think, creating a mindset of creativity,
mm.
which can lead into productivity. I know you're very passionate about environment, aren't you? Like you like your house to be just so, and you won't teach, you won't create courses that are like in a really horrible, I don't know, like dull environment. So tell me
Yeah.
why environment's important to you.
This is a really, really big topic for me, and I'm sure because it is so important, because I that it will come up again in future episodes, and I'd like to kind of dig a lot deeper on this for lots of reasons. And I think it's because it's not usually one of the first things that people consider when they think about behaviour change. It's
Hmm.
just not. It's very, very low down on the list for a lot of people. In fact, most people, I think, probably wouldn't think to consider it, certainly in a course. Whereas for me, alongside all of the foundational stuff that we've looked at, think about how even just the conversation that we've had so far about the light, where we are in terms of how we perform, where you are and the space you are in will have an impact on your performance. It will. And there is enough research out there in the world to highlight the really significant effects of environment on our development, on our growth, on our ability to learn, um, on our ability to work and be functional in a workspace. So think about things like building sickness, we know is a really really, really important area of research, where we know that people can become incredibly ill just from being in particular environments. You know, those cubicles that people often have to work in with the bad lighting. How productive do you really feel when you're in that space? So
Mm.
for someone like me, where I've always, since being a very, very young child, wanted to have a nice space. I was that kid that loved having their own bedroom, would spend every weekend, you know, moving everything around in my room, moving my bed and my furniture and creating little nooks and corners, and just loved to create that really homely kind of nested environment. And I've continued that into my older age. So, um, you know, I just love creating a lovely home. Um, my
Yeah,
space is incredibly important. From the minute you set foot into a space, and this is the way it is for me, it sets the tone for what's ahead.
yeah, yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
yeah, and so I do, and again, I'm kind of gleaning over it for now. I'm sure we'll go back in and we'll dig deeper on some of these things I'm saying. But I like to do that on the courses that I teach. And I teach that you have an opportunity to help someone change from the minute they set foot in the room. So, how are
Mm.
you priming someone to change from the minute they set foot in the environment? And
Mm.
again,
So,
I don't know how you relate to that. So, if there's anything that kind of resonates for you in what I said
yeah,
there.
a lot of stuff resonate. And when you said about your childhood, I had flashbacks to my um, probably teenage years. Well, in my childhood, I was always very, very tidy,
Mm,
and contrary to what I am now, but that's because I'm busy, I think. But I loved everything super organized. Everything was organized, and the word coherence brings to mind. So for me, my environment has to be coherent in terms of, like, color schemes, tidiness, organization. My husband's very, very different. His stuff is, but I think it's
right,
a space limitation as well. But even so, even if there's a space limitation, for me, I like to have those little boxes where you can put all the staplers in one box. You can put
right.
all the paper clips in another box. You can put all your rubbers, all your hair clips. Oh, I just love that neat and tidiness. It makes me feel very settled.
Mm,
Um, and if I do feel stressed and out of control or overwhelmed, what I will often do is tidy up.
yeah.
And I will tidy up to give me a sense of power,
Mm,
empowerment, and just a sense that I'm in control. So
mm,
getting a drawer and just throwing stuff away and decluttering is hugely important to my sense of equilibrium, a sense of like inner calm, inner peace. And I don't know if you do this, but if I buy a new outfit, I will, if I buy a new top or something, I'll clear out all my tops to make way for this kind of new top that I've bought. It's like,
interesting.
yeah, and I'll take great pleasure in sending all my old clothes to the charity shop or something, like, that it's that cycle of
Mm,
renewal, I guess, and new, out with the old and in with the new. It creates a sense of cleanness in my system and all of that. But yeah, there's just so much in a space that can evoke feelings, which then evoke certain habits and behaviors that are either helpful or unhelpful. Um,
absolutely, and I think
yeah,
a really easy way of people making sense of that is often, so when I teach this as well, I often get people to think about environments that do already cue a response. For example, the dentist.
yeah,
You know, if think about environments where you are instantly, you an emotion is evoked purely by an environment. Obviously, there's something going on in a dentist, but what I'm saying is the smell of it, the how it looks, the aesthetics, where you're going, all of those things cue you to respond to that environment in a particular way. And so again, going back to that behavior change theme, which is what, you know, our focus is I would argue that there's a lot that we can manipulate in an environment to make that as positive an interaction as possible. And also we can do things to cue people for change.
mm,
It can
yeah. Well,
feel it can feel positive.
Yeah, so what sort of things? So I'm thinking of, lighting and music and scents. If you think of your typical spa-like environment, when you go into a spa,
Yeah,
it's low-level lighting. There's lots of luxurious fabrics and textures, and maybe tiles, different shimmering iridescent tiles, or plants, and temperatures that evoke different responses as well. So maybe we should be making our hospitals a bit more like spas.
well, this is it. This is what I say, and it's really hard because obviously I work with a lot of healthcare professionals, and this is a really challenging conversation for people who do work in hospitals because they are limited by what they can do. So again, just trying to encourage people to think about the small things that they can do to alter the environment. Is it that they are allowed in a particular space to have plants? Because we'll get onto green space because that's a whole other thing that's connected to this as well, and how
Okay.
important environment is. But you're right, smells, music, lighting. What can we do? And certainly, if you've got your own clinic or your own practice, you can control that. So, thinking about those things that we can do to really powerfully evoke a positive response in someone, cue them for change, and kind
Mhm.
of get them in the space ready to undertake the work that feels exciting and inspiring and positive. So, when I had my own space, which I sometimes grieve because I don't have it anymore. And it's partly I grieve not having it because I'm a control. I like to control every aspect of what I do in terms of creating that environment for change. So, I would always have oils burning in the room. So the oils that that particular client liked, I knew what they were, and I'd have those on the go. I'd have their favorite coffee or tea brewing, so that the smell of that. Music, if they liked it, if they didn't, it wouldn't be on. So all those little cues ready, and just having a really beautiful space
Yeah.
that says, I mean, this isn't rocket science. We're not going really deep when I say this, but we know that, if someone's taken care of their environment and it looks nice and you can see that they take care of the detail, there's something that unconsciously translates to us that says they're therefore going to take care of us and they're going to take care of the details of me.
Yeah, it's that first impressions last cliche, isn't it?
It is, but again, so much of this stuff is we take it in unconsciously.
Yeah.
Again, if you go back to kind of feeling your way into that and listening to your gut, you know the difference intuitively between spaces that you feel good in and those that you don't.
Yeah.
So if you were just to be mindful and kind of break that down as to why you feel better in some spaces versus others, and that translates to what we're focused on, behavior change. So do you want to go and work in those spaces or undertake work on yourself in an environment that you don't feel happy in or inspired in?
Yeah.
It's not quite the same.
Yeah, it comes back to that inspiration, doesn't it? Because if we're talking about workplaces and the
Mm,
levels of productivity that are required from people, sitting at a desk for 8 hours is not conducive to mental health, physical health, emotional well-being, connection, creativity, productivity, and hence the reason why you've got companies like Google that have massive play areas, and Mind
yes.
Valley that have all these like interesting sculptures, and you're encouraged to get up off your desk and
Mm,
walk around and chat and go to soft play, adult soft play,
yeah,
to like
yeah.
really get tactile and kinesthetic with yourself. Um, and yeah, I mean, I don't know how we make those changes happen for companies that aren't there yet. But I guess if we can start to make those changes in our own lives and start to see the benefits of those changes in our own lives and actually recognize the importance of them, then hopefully, that will start to filter out into places that don't already have environment considerations happening, you
Mm.
know?
It's so funny that you mentioned Google. But so years and years ago, when I used to teach a lot of organizational psychology, actually, I used to do a whole session on the environment, and I used to show a video of the Google offices to my students. And I got them to look at the difference between Google as an environment and a different environment that was like a very bog standard corporate looking office. Um, with nothing really there for the employees. You had to go out and get your own sandwich from down the road kind of thing, versus Google, which had, the on-site cafeteria, which you can go and order all free for their employees, order any food that you wanted to. As you've said, play areas, a whole games room, a nap station, like a place where
Yeah.
you could go and have a little nap in a room if you needed a break. Lovely areas where you could go and work in little cubicles if you needed to take a call. So I got my students to consider how different it might be to work in these environments. And what was interesting was many of them didn't choose the Google environment.
Wow. Would they say it was
Really
too
surprised.
distracting?
Yes.
Yeah.
And many said that they couldn't be trusted in that environment to get any work done. And
Wow.
also, the other really interesting thing that came out of those sessions was, and again, it would kind of repeat year after year, it's the same kind of thing coming through. Lots of people felt suspicious by the environment that had been created.
Really?
Yeah, so suspicious in that they felt that uh, if they were trying to kind of, butter you up and make you stay at work, and they were
Ah.
creating this home from home. Because actually in the video I showed, they actually interviewed lots of Google employees too. And there were employees that said things like they didn't really want to go home, and that they saw their Google family more than their real family. And so all of that kind of
Oh.
fed in to this really, that's this, now it's sinister. You're creating a lovely environment because actually you're trying to get me to do something, which is to stay here longer.
Oh my God. This is
Which
smacking of cult.
Yes, which is another podcast altogether, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We both like to listen to lots of things about cults. The psychology of cults is very interesting.
And narcissism, yeah.
Yes, but yeah, interesting how, and that's just the, arguably it's just the environment. There's an environment there, but it's evoked a particular, or evokes a response. It will be a very individual response to what you're encountering. Personally, I'd love it.
Yeah, and for me, what's coming up is, well, if I'm a workaholic, that's just going to reinforce that, and I'm going to love it, and
Mm,
it's. But the definitions of workaholic can often be a little bit dodgy as well. I think because for me, my work gives my life meaning and purpose. And so I
mm,
do tend to give it more attention. I know that
mm,
sometimes that can make other aspects of my life become or feel less important, even though they're not. They just start to feel less important, and they start to like fracture because of the
mm,
amount of attention I put on my work. But if your work gives you a lot of meaning and purpose, then
mm.
why shouldn't you give it lots of attention, or spend a greater portion of your time focusing on it?
Yeah, true. And also, if you do, like for me, I don't know if this is linking to what you're saying, but I do try and create environments and spaces that I like to work in because it is my focus and it is my passion, and I do want to do it a lot. So I try and, like, say for example, is that your home office at
Yeah,
home?
yeah.
And do you find that you spend most of your time working there? Is that where you would do most of your work, or do you do it in other areas of your house?
No, this is where I spend most of my time doing my work. I do have a laptop. Sometimes I'll set up in the front room or the kitchen table just for a change of environment. But it also makes me think of co-working spaces. Like, I'm
Mm,
not the kind of person that could work in a co-working space,
mm.
because for me, it's about the efficiency of having a home office as well. I'm probably going on to a totally different topic
Yeah,
here.
I probably pulled you there, Sally, because I kind of switched it back to the specific place that you were working. Um, but what you said about co-working is interesting because at the university I have to share an office space
Mm.
with other lecturers, which is why I haven't used my office in about 3 years. So
Oh,
I can't do it. I just
okay.
cannot. So I did share an office before that with three other women, and it was a nightmare for me.
So
I
you
just
can't
couldn't
do
do
it. No.
it. No, I mean, you know, when I wanted to switch on the fact that I'd like to have a conversation, but I do find it really distracting that people can just pull on you whenever they feel like it. So I don't get as much work done in a co-working space at all by any stretch of the imagination as I would working on my own. And also for me, there was a big problem with you can't, you know, if we've all got, at the time, we all had students that we were supervising. So trying to have private conversations, it just doesn't work in a co-working space for me at all.
Mm, mm. No, you're right. I think for me, focus, I do
Yeah.
get easily distracted. Focus is hugely important. Um, but on the flip side of that, the negative side of that, it can be isolation. So I do
Right.
see the benefit of co-working spaces in that you can make connections,
Mm.
possible collaborations. But I think as well, we can get too sucked into all of that too. Like I now don't really do many collaborations apart from
Mm.
really well thought out ones and swaps and things like that. I've made, yes, you're on the list, Serena. You're my favorite. um, yeah, I just like I've been sucked into arrangements with people where they want to do swaps with you, but uh, it just doesn't work for me. It
Mm.
just doesn't feel right. There's always a slight imbalance of energetic exchange.
Mm.
Um, anyway, I'm completely digressing.
That's okay. Well, let's pull you back. So what makes a good working environment for you, and why would that? What makes it good for you? So, what do you need in your environment?
Well, a window for starters, because I've
Right.
had working spaces when I taught singing for a long time.
Mm.
I would teach singing in soundproof rooms. And
Ah.
the fact that I never had a window for a few years was just awful, just like awful, awful, awful. And it pulled me back to the days when I used to be a beauty therapist working in a spa where I never had a window. And it would be scorching heat outside, and I'd be in this dark cave massaging people all day. And that's one of the reasons why I had to get out of that profession. Kudos and credit to people that are beauty therapists in those spa like environments, because it's really, really hard. It's hard on
Mm.
your mental, physical, and emotional health. You're giving, giving, giving physically and
Yeah.
energetically all day to others, and you're not replenishing because you're not able to get fresh air and sunlight and daylight and all of that. So that sort of harks back. The fact that I need a window harks back to those days. And now I have like a 3-paneled massive window, an ocean view, view of the
Oh.
hills. It's not perfect. I've got traffic noise, but it's as good as it's going to be for the moment.
Mm.
And that is super important. Temperature is really, really important for me.
Mm.
So this flat gets quite hot in the summer because it's east facing and all of the glass, and we're not allowed to have air conditioning. So we've recently had ceiling fans installed, and
Mm.
that was an environmental consideration as well in all the rooms, including this room, just because I don't want to have to carry my Dyson fan or whatever fan it was from room to room to room, and they're cumbersome and they're sitting there taking up space. So I thought, stick it on the ceiling. But again, I had to get a nice one, not just any old ceiling fan. It's got to be a
Mm.
nice one. My
Mm.
electrician sent me some ceiling fans. I was like, no, just no. It's got to be nice. So temperature, also lighting. I've said about the warm lighting versus cold lighting, and color. I like a lot of color. Color makes
No.
me happy.
Yeah, if you're not watching this on YouTube and you're listening, what you can't see is that, well, Sally is the most colourful person you will ever clap eyes on.
I probably look like a pile of vomit to you, Serena, with all your sort of dark
I know.
muted tones.
Yeah, here's me in my dark snug. Actually, look, there's a bright cushion there, and I've got it matches my nails. Yeah,
Ah,
But yeah, muted colours. This is the most colourful room in my house where I am now.
Mm. But having
Yeah.
said that, I am quite into the dark muted thing. It's just that, my
Mm,
default is color.
mm,
So my front room, we've completely redone that. We've got teal, navy, gold, and saffron in there at the moment, with splashes of
mm.
pink and orange. And the curtains are sort of rich jade velvet. I know.
I'm
It's a
freaking out for
wash.
this podcast.
Yeah, it's a wash. But we're not
The
going to do the
vomit
bed.
colour. No, it is actually gorgeous. I'm just like, yeah, yeah. It's a lot of colour for me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's fine, isn't it? Like we're all so different with our tastes. But
Definitely.
before that, it was fluorescent. So fluoro it's like, how can I get noticed more, basically,
Ah,
which
that's interesting.
again harks back to some childhood stuff
Mm,
where I felt sort of pretty ignored and felt like I had to shout louder to be noticed or be heard above the rest. So yeah, it's interesting where
interesting.
that comes from. Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. It's
So
funny
where
because
does
oh, go on. What are you going to
I was going to
say?
say, where does your design color palette come from? That sort of charcoal sense.
The grey muted. Yeah. I think it's for me, it's about it feels calming to my nervous system.
Ah,
I'm really drawn to very natural environments. So for me, it's all about nature, 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 nature. So
yeah.
I think for me, again, the light is a really key element. Um, I think if I had infinite money and the ability to kind of create any home I wanted, it would have a lot of glass. Well, I say that. Um, I would want to have a lot of light pouring into the house a
Hmm.
lot. Um, I just need to be able to afford to pay the heating bill with that kind of glass.
Yeah, for sure.
But basically, natural. It's for me. It's all about natural tones and natural textures. So my house is full to the brim. Everywhere you look, there are plants everywhere. There's at least kind of 3 or 4 plants in every room. Looking around, I could just see green everywhere. Um, Natural textures, so lots of natural wood and wicker and neutral natural tones, and so some of those darker tones just kind of pull in really well. So for me, being in a space where I'm working, or if I'm out and I see a space that kind of feels like that, I'm really pulled towards it. And I think it's all because it's very natural and it's very nature based, which again is I just think when you're looking at how people function, nature, it doesn't have to look like that, because nature is also really bright,
Hmm.
flowers so it's not necessarily that I'm saying that this is the way it is and it's right, and nature is only these dark tones and greens and everything, um, but we know that nature is a really big component in people changing. So
Yeah.
it's why we have green prescription. It's why
Ah,
we're
yes.
able to provide, so the social prescribing, and part of social prescribing, we have green prescribing.
Yeah.
And it's because we know that nature does play a really, really big part in how we function and how we feel.
I couldn't agree more. I'm a big, big advocate of nature. And actually, funnily enough, in our front room now, we've got three massive plants. We never used to have plants
Mm,
in the
mm,
front room. So we're on the fourth floor. And as a result of that, I've often felt quite ungrounded. I've often
mm,
felt like really disconnected from nature. But the difference in having those three plants, they're quite big and I'm really tending to them, which is really lovely as well. Um, it makes such a huge difference. So now I go in there, and when I meditate, for example, in there, I feel much more connected to nature just by
mm.
having a little bit of something natural in the environment. It makes a huge difference. It really, really does. And as we get the flat more renovated, I'm going to add more plants in for
Mm.
sure, because I'm totally seeing how the difference in sort of energetic quality and yeah, just how they make me feel mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, and especially for you, where like you do live in a flat and you are quite high up, aren't you? So the fact that
Mm,
you're kind of retaining that connection through being able to see nature and
yeah,
have light come in, and also having something in your environment that is real, that is actually there and tangible.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. And like it has such a massive impact. Like this is going to make me sound really snobby now, but we just come back from Gran Canaria and we stayed in a hotel that my mum and dad choose every time they go there because it's close to a bike hire place that my dad goes to.
mm.
Now this hotel is a push a 4 star. Okay. When I go with Graham, we're very much used to going 5 star because
Keep going, Sam.
yeah, dig yourself a hole, Sal. um, just because, we work hard. I've
Yeah,
got no children. I'm going to spend my money on 5 star hotels. Sue me,
you.
okay? um, and I really noticed the difference in how I came back and my whole holiday experience through doing 4 star versus 5 star. In the
Mm,
4 star hotel. And not to say that it's any more cheaper, because it's sometimes that when we do go 5 star, we make sure we get good deals. We can't afford
yeah.
to go 5 star in peak season. Let me just make that clear. Um, yeah, like just not having like the balcony space, for example, to roll out a yoga mat,
Right.
or being quite close to other rooms,
Mm,
not having the space to just sort of sit in a chair rather than sit on your bed.
yeah.
Um, all that sort of stuff just made the holiday a little bit more stressful because I wasn't
Mm,
able to do my sort of self-care rituals that I do every day based on
mm.
the environmental limitations. So yeah, I do think, yeah, just coming back to that whole point, environment does play such a huge part in our behaviors.
I think so. It's one of the reasons that, and if you don't mind me just mentioning that I do have a in-person course coming up, Sally, big plug.
Yes,
On
please.
a serious note, so that with that and thinking, the heart of this conversation is environment, and I guess we're speaking more broadly about how it impacts us. And I would argue that even if you think it doesn't, it does. That's the other thing. Is there something going on? I think I keep trying to allude to the fact that lots of this interpretation of our environment is actually unconscious. We don't really know it's affecting us necessarily. Some things feel really stark. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm going into this dark room, or I'm going to be put in a cubicle to work, and you have a response to that. But sometimes we don't know what's going to impact our ability to perform, which links to behaviour change.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to things that I put together, um, I have no control for a lot of what I do in terms of my work about where I end up teaching or training, because if I'm brought into a space, it is often a hospital or a clinic. And they're not always great spaces to be in. In old hospitals that I might go and train in, I'm in the belly of a hospital, very, very little natural light, um, dark rooms with horrid furniture, and I always try, if I can, and try and convince the provider to consider having the training outside of the hospital for so many reasons. Not just because the environment itself is not, in my mind, conducive to change, and I want people to change when they're in the room because teaching someone is changing them,
Yeah.
but also because those people have an association with that being their workplace as well. And so that is not cueing them to learn in the same way. So that's really, really,
That's so true, actually. That really is
yeah.
true. It's like, I remember reading in a book, Essentialism by Greg McKeown. He was saying if you really want to like change your life, take yourself out of your environment so that you can zoom out and get a much wider perspective on what is your life, essentially. Because when you're in it, you can't see the wood for the trees.
Mm,
You're sort of blinded by your perspective in a way. So removing
yeah.
yourself, that's why I guess, retreats are exploding right now, aren't they? So many
Yeah.
retreats to go on. And
Yeah.
they're all about the environment. Not necessarily, I know retreats where you're not even doing anything. You're just
Mm,
like reading retreats. So you get 10
yeah,
people together and you bring a pile of books, you go to this beautiful place, lunch is served, dinner is served, the rest is just reading and chatting.
that sounds lovely.
I mean, and you don't even, I know, you don't, from a business point of view, I'm thinking, well, that's actually genius because you don't even need to like plan
Do anything.
anything, get anyone in, no slides, no nothing, just like organic experiential
Mm,
connection, learning in a really organic, natural way.
yeah.
Mm,
But being in that, but again, it's about, I mean, there is, jokes aside, a lot of work goes into creating anything. I think people don't realize actually how much work goes into, just putting on a retreat.
yeah,
Because a lot more goes into it than you think.
for sure.
So yeah, going back to what I've created, and when I work with people, as I said, trying to convince them that you need to consider taking people out of their normal environment can be a real challenge, mostly to do with cost, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
The added cost, if they've got a room in a hospital or a clinic, they don't want to consider adding cost on to hire a different space. And I even have this fight with corporate sometimes when I do corporate training, trying to convince them to have a slightly nicer space than just a horrid standard, hotel conference room with a blue carpet and blue chairs and PowerPoint. Oh, it's like my idea of hell. Because
yeah,
again, the minute you walk in, they are cued to think this is a standard, boring corporate training, because that's what I would think.
yeah,
Again, when you're talking about change, if you really want change to occur, the power of taking yourself out of your normal environment and putting yourself somewhere where actually every facet of that environment is there to nurture the shift in you.
yeah.
And
Do you
again,
know?
know intuitively to do that. Just the fact that we've shared a lot, both of us, about our personal spaces and what we do, that translates to other things that you want to do. You take yourself maybe to a gym because there's a reason that you take yourself to that environment to do that thing.
Yeah.
You know, you go to places where you are seeking a deeper level change. So you take yourself somewhere to specifically do that.
Yeah, it's that up leveling, isn't it? So
Yeah.
when you go to a gym, you're putting yourself in the right environment to up level your strength and your fitness. It reminds me, so in COVID, a friend and
Mm,
I took advantage of all of the cheap hotels. But it's when people were traveling but not in droves, and we went we
yeah.
went to the most amazing luxury five-star hotel that I
I'm
could
seeing a
never
theme
afford.
in your life here, Sally.
I know.
Five-star hotel.
Well, this is where it
Yeah.
all started. This is where the problem started, and I'm about to tell you.
Okay, go on.
It's called the Bless Hotel in Ibiza along the north. Oh, I can't remember exactly where it was. North east
Yeah.
coast, and I mean, my jaw hit the floor when we went. It was a place where I thought this is going to be really, really special. We had 5 days there, and it cost like £1,000 each for 5 days in cheap times.
Mm.
Um, and it literally ruined every other subsequent holiday. But what it did do is up level my my drive to earn
Yeah.
more money so that I
Yeah.
could now, because you can't go back. That's the trouble. The next holiday I had after that was in a 4-star in Gran Canaria. My God, was I stroppy for the first few days. I was so stroppy. We had to upgrade the room to a junior suite after that, which had a little bit more space and it was nice.
Mm.
But when we came back from that holiday, it really made me put the blinkers on and help me to see I can't go back. Environment is so important to me now. It's
Yeah.
shifted so much of my own behaviors, my own identity, my own values, my own expression.
Mm.
Become so much more interested in design and how color and design and all of that affects so much of our output. So yeah,
It really
that was what.
does. No, I love that, and you're right. And I love that in you it evoked a desire to want to maybe earn more and be able to sustain that kind of level of luxury, really.
Yeah.
So that's a shift that it inspired in you. Um, yeah, I just think that obviously, what we're saying is consider your environment. It's incredibly important. And for me, it will be always something that I both include in a lot more detail, obviously, and I hope we get to cover this in future episodes where we can look at a little bit more around the depth of that and how that looks from a research perspective, because this is something I go into in the training that I do.
Yeah.
Um, it's something that I really try and do for everyone that I teach. Again, going back to that training that I've put together, which is in the Lake District in October, I've put so much thought into the environment and the aesthetics to illustrate what change looks like from the minute you set foot into a space, because
Mm.
change starts from that minute that you step, like you said about the hotel, from the
Mm.
minute you step in. I want people to feel on that retreat that just by walking towards the venue, where you're going to walk past the Windermere Lake and you're going to walk towards this really different, quirky building, and from all of the teaching spaces you can see Lake Windermere, that nature is on your doorstep, that things like the food, everything's really beautifully catered. I've got really beautiful things and kind of surprises for the room for people, and things that will be in the space that they get to see and take away, that they get to actually then immerse themselves in the water with a swim
Mm.
later on in the evening, taking care of you in a different environment. So yeah, just all of those little touch points.
Mm.
It's not just the training that you're getting. All of it, and think about this for any training that you go on. All of those things, all of those little touch points make a difference and cue you in a particular way to engage or not engage with what's happening. And I think, yeah, just for people, I think as a takeaway, just to be mindful of that, certainly if you're creating something for other people. And I think there'll be people listening that already know how deeply important this is to them as well.
Yeah, for sure. One
Yeah.
quick question I wanted to ask you before we wrap things up.
Yeah.
How can we get someone to improve their space? Excuse me, I'm having a bit of a throat
Yeah.
situation here.
Yeah. You're right.
Okay, back in the room.
You're right.
Yeah,
You're right
so yeah.
there.
One quick question I wanted to explore with you is how can we get someone to improve or change or modify their environment to help them to feel better?
It's a really, really good question. So I think something that we have to be really mindful of is not everyone will have the resources to do this,
Yeah.
but there are always really small things that we can all try and do. Um, So in your own environment, I would actually just first of all start by taking notice about where you feel better.
Mm.
So where do you notice that you have better energy? Maybe you notice that in particular rooms in your house that you gravitate towards them. Maybe you really don't like being in your house.
Mm.
Maybe you like being, I've got a friend, for example, she cannot stand being in her own house.
Why is that?
Well, there's a lot there to unpack. I think just the environment is actually it's a very, very dark home.
Mm.
She doesn't really own any of the furniture. It's a rented property. And then there's some deeper psychological things there. She lost her dog while living in that house. I think there's a negative association.
Yeah.
However, she really gravitates towards another friend's house and she kind of wants to almost live in this house. So my point is if you notice that you don't really like aspects of your home or environment, but you can notice where you do like to be, can you take note of what it is specifically about that environment that you like?
Mm.
Is it that, for example, it's a lot lighter? Is it that you feel that that person's put love into their home? In that case, what does that look like? What are you interpreting as being someone taking care of their environment? Is it just that it's tidy? Is it that they have fresh flowers every time you go?
Mm.
It sounds, again, it might sound very pedantic and very insignificant, but it's all of those small touches that start to create a nicer environment for you. And what you can then start to do is think about what you can pull into your own home,
Yeah.
and not try and do it on a big scale. Is it? Can you just think about changing one room
Do you
and
know what
having one
really?
feel nice for you?
Do you know a simple thing that you can do? I don't know if you do this, Serena, but color code your bookshelves. So instead of
Oh, I've got
having,
one colour coded and one not.
have you?
Yeah, it's because
But
I
my
can't be
God,
bothered. How
it
do you find
makes,
that?
go on.
Do you like it? Do you? Because you said at the
Yeah,
start you like order though. You like order, don't you?
I do like order. Yeah, I color
Yeah.
code my wardrobe. So instead of having like spring, or summer and winter wardrobe, I'll just have it in color. So all the blacks going into navies, going into purples and
Right.
greens, like the rainbow.
Mm.
And I will do my bookshelves like that as well. And it's again,
Oh,
it's like if you've got books, I mean, you can see these ones a little bit color coded, not great. There's a few, but the
mm.
red's going into the yellows there. um, yeah, it's if you've got books and you've got a bookshelf, that's something that you can do that doesn't cost
Yeah.
anything apart from energy to
Yeah.
perhaps make you feel a bit differently. And also, you know where books are a lot easier if they're color coded because you will, if you've got a visual
Yeah.
memory anyway, you'll remember the color.
I think for me, one of the biggest things I would say is to have your space be tidy and
Mm.
clean.
Are
There's a
you a
lot.
fan of Marie Kondo?
I like parts of what she does. I read a book. Yeah. I mean, I'm naturally very tidy and organised anyway. The bit that I took the most from Marie Kondo's work was I can have a tendency to be a little bit of a hoarder.
Hmm.
And my hoarding is based on nostalgia.
Okay.
So I wore that then, so it therefore has meaning. Or my mum bought me that, so I won't let it go.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
think how her work helped me particularly was there was one little thing that she said, which is a bit woo woo, but that's where we go, Sally. So, and it was to thank something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I found that really helpful as a little unlock. It's like, thank you for kind of, what I got from owning you. And kind of, yeah, you can go now. I had what I needed from this thing. So that was really helpful.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
liked Marie Kondo.
I was about to say, but being tidy, having a tidy, clean space is actually really, so just for mental health reasons as well. So we
Yeah.
know that when a lot of people are declining in their mental function, that they struggle to clean and have a
Yeah.
tidy home. And that can, a lot of people I think who are listening might relate to that feeling of a cluttered house as a cluttered mind. And you said it yourself at the start that you have to clean sometimes before you do anything.
Mm.
Um, and I certainly cannot work in a mess. I
Mm.
cannot. I will also clean before I undertake any work if it's messy, which it rarely is around me because I'm so anal about it. Yeah, so cleaning and tidying is a key one. And the other thing is, can you bring any plants into your space? I just think it's a game changer. Clean, tidy space and bringing something natural into your environment.
Yeah, and just starting small as well. If someone is in that kind of slightly dark, or depressed,
Mm,
immobilized state, and things are going a little bit messy around them. What's the word? Atrophying or something that they use in physics. I can't remember. Is to just start small and see how you feel. Like in a way, I think there does have to be a little bit of forcing yourself to do
mm,
something at first. I mean, that's what
mm,
it's like for me anyway. I think because I know how I'm going to feel afterwards.
mm,
It's just those micro pushes. Like if I could just push myself to clean the kitchen or load the dishwasher or just put some washing
mm,
away, then at least I can draw a line under that and then I can go back to just resting if I need to. So
mm,
you're not, because I think sometimes when tasks feel like they're too big, you're not going to
mm.
start climbing the mountain because the mountain just feels too high to climb. But if you can just climb a step,
Yeah,
then that's a win in my eyes. Like just movement in the direction of what is wanted is success.
I love it. I think that's a lovely place to end as well, and hopefully people can take some nuggets from that. And like I said, I think certainly we've covered the surface level of this. And I think it's something I'd like to cover maybe again in the future, and we go a little bit deeper and look at kind of some of the research around environment as well, because
Yeah.
there's some juicy there. But
Yeah,
that for
I'm
another time.
happy to do that, Serena. Yes. Awesome. What an amazing chat. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'll see you again next time, Sally.
See you next time.
Bye.
Good morning, Serena. It's lovely to see you again for this conversation around behaviour change and
Start again.
environment.
I just talked
Well,
over you. We'll find our stride. Right, start again, Sally. You're brilliant at this. Claire,
good morning. Well, not, oh, fucking hell. Right, let me start again. Good morning, Serena Simmons. How are you today? I hope you're well.
Sally
Oh,
Garozzo, what a
fucking hell, I
pleasure
hate
to
that
be
as well.
here again. I was going to say on
And
this
you
fine morning,
frozen.
but do you know
Oh,
what? We're filming this